in our second series of the day. But before we do that, I have to, of course, get into this best of three as we have begun the draft of game number 1. FPX on the blue side to start things off, and they are really targeting Shun.
Yeah, we'll try and give Milky Way as easy a route back to the start as possible. I mean, Xin Zhao currently looking like that premier jungler that they could look for with Trundle and Poppy both banned away. Looks like a really good opener to look into. We've got Azir, we've got Talia still open in the mid lane, Gwen out of that top side as well. So, I think that there's a little bit of a meme around Scout on Azir. So FPX maybe going to look for the Talia here, maybe going to look for the Xin Zhao to try and pair those up. But they've got a pretty decent couple of first picks to go into. And it looks like they are going to prioritize Milky Way in that first pick, taking these Xin Zhao early on. Does give JDG their choice of mid laners, expect that Talia to be taken. And you can maybe see a bit of an answer in that jungle role to the Xin Zhao as well being picked up.
Yeah, I think picking jungle in this first 3 for JDG going to be pretty important just because of all the champions that have already been taken off of the board. And the fact that you just want to make sure you lock that up before more bans can potentially come. The Wukong, not necessarily a big surprise as Shun has played that a lot this split and it's looked pretty good on it. And a pretty classic jungle matchup to open things up. Milky Way on the Xin Zhao should be pretty exciting as a player and on a pick that has a lot of agency here.
And then for FPX, it's about probably rounding out that top side in terms of those top laners that we typically see get blinded. Things like Renekton are pretty decent in, blind pick situations. We've got already the Rumble being theorized and actually being taken away here. So for Xiaoxu on this top side, electing to go away from that Renekton pick, which we've seen pretty good successes on, but also providing that diverse damage profile between the mid lane, or the top lane rather, and the jungler. And now it's a case of what does Xia want to do, and it feels like almost a switch up of roles here for our two top laners, where we've seen Xia have really strong, solid performances on these carry style top laners, and maybe faltered a little bit more on these tanks, but he's the one defaulted to the Ornn. Xiaoxu put on a carry, put with the carry pants in his, on his feet really more than anything else.
Yeah, and this is a nice test for a player like Xiaoxu. He's played a decent amount of Renekton of Rumble this split, and it's looked good on it. But now getting this against Sheer in a position where he should be able to have a relatively easy laning phase and try to turn that into some teamfight success. Overall, already big AoE ultimate ability set up for JDG's top side is going to be a very important part of how this game operates as we head into that second phase of bans.
Yeah, we are just looking at double death balls at the minute, so those big hyper carry ADCs do tend to slightly increase in priority. If you can find that first kill, then start to snowball through the fight. Things like Sivir as well, we've seen pair really nicely and start to really rise in priority, so maybe we'll get to see that be picked up by Peyz if he wants to take an early pick into that AD carry role. Does look like our supports are the ones getting pinched, at least by JDG, knowing that they're going to have first dibs on it. Expectation is that Wink will try to find a counter down on that bot side, but with the Rakan takeaway here does suggest that they either want to use the Braum or to get rid of it. I'd like to see FPX themselves probably ban out that Braum. It's a really solid answer to the Ornn in particular, and can also be used to stop a Weaver's Wall, stop a Call the Forge God. It's a really solid ban overall if they want to try and take that, and you can see that for JDG, they're electing to get rid of those engage style supports, the Nautilus, your Alistair taken off the board. So they're looking to prevent Jwei from having those big engages. And when we look at the type of player and type of engages that Jwei's gone for, things like a Nico wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, especially now with the Alistar and the Nautilus taken off the board. Things like Rel, well, now it's banned away, but that alongside like a Leona, still some tankier options, but Jwei on the Nico really making a name for himself. One of the pioneers of this pick in the support position specifically throughout 2025. So we'll see if it does become an option, adding a little bit of a counter to some of the big circles of damage that JDG have set up for themselves. It's going to be Lucian for Peyz to start things off in the bottom side. A little bit surprising
Braum looks
here,
good.
and it gives
Braum
Braum an option here for FPX. Maybe they got to pick it away here.
Yeah, keep Cubby happy. Take the Braum champion when it's OP. Don't take it super early on. But for FPX, what their composition currently lacks, honestly, is a little bit of that DPS. And I don't know that Ezreal gives you that exact amount. This kind of changes their composition a little bit more into being pick-focused, where you knock up one target with Xin Zhao, then flick that target with the Cilia Seismic Shove, and then you can use a couple of Ezreal spells as well to try and take down that focus in particular, which, up against this JDG roster, not necessarily the worst thing in the world. world, but I think that taking this Braum A for themselves is a pretty big boost because it takes it away from JDG, but it also does mean that their composition is very focused on finding one target. For JDG themselves, they're not very tanky, so I think FPX could find some success. You know, if JDG are caught out, if there is a position where they're not supposed to be, they get tagged by a Winter's Bite and taken down by Xin Zhao, that target is going to fall very quickly.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Jwei and Milky Way can do together in that specific duo. I feel like having a lot of power and giving Milky Way big opportunities to give FPX an early lead here in this game. The final pick is going to be Wink on the Nami. Has been another pretty standard pick alongside the Lucian. I feel like we haven't seen it as much. It's been a lot more of the Brahms, even some Leonas paired alongside Lucians recently, but still a pick that's going to be able to do well in the 2v2 at least. And JDG have themselves a very standard team composition, to say the least.
Yeah, for your supports, right, you use Braum to counter engage. He's a very good disengage champion. If somebody comes into you, you can just tag them and then they get stunned pretty quickly. The issue is that Nami very infrequently is in your backline. And if she's there, then she's probably done something wrong in the first place and goes down pretty quickly. So in the laning phase, this Lucian Nami should be looking to kind of run that bot side of the map, piercing lights through the minions and hopefully generating an advantage through this Lucian power. We'll say that the Lucian Nami duo itself isn't as strong as it used to be. You know, not necessarily through to a couple of nerfs, but just because the strength of other supports with Lucian has certainly increased. I think that at the minute Talia or rather that Nami and Lucian, I think that Nami's maybe Lucian's 8th best AD carry pairing at the minute, or support pairing, just by terms of win rate. But with the Nami being locked in, it does offer some really good disengage to them as well, if we do see FPX go forward.
Yeah, actually a lot of disengage set up here for JDG, which, you know, doesn't counter a ton of hard engage for FPX, but in general, I think when a 5v5 starts out, the biggest go button for either of these teams is probably that Call of the Forge God over on Sheer's side. So I'm expecting big explosive team fights on both sides. Milky Way's re-debut with FPX against his former teammate Xiaoxu on JDG should be an exciting one here as we kick off our day in LPL, starting in Group Ascent.
Really silent in there.
Might have talked over the Jayos, or teams are just, the fans are just waiting until maybe later in the series to figure out who to root for. We are in Beijing, the home of JDG. Speaking of JDG, going for a 5-man invade to start things off. They don't have a ton of hard crowd control level 1, but can certainly issue the damage as FPX are very far forward. They're going on to JiaQi at 200 HP. Now Jwei could be the target. He's very out of position at this point. Has to burn a flash or something, but it looks like he should be away without just taking a little bit of his health bar.
I mean, I say fine. This is awful for their bot lane because they're going to have to recall. They're probably going to miss a lot of experience. You see Peyz, he's just waiting. We'll W this. Yeah, so they'll quite happily take the turret shot for this. And it's going to make this bot lane duo probably even more scared than they were previously, right? This is now heal down for Jwei. This is flash down for JiaQi, a player on FPX who we've said has been pretty instrumental in the majority of their successes, and a really small thing as well that Wink's just done is actually pull the wave, it looks like. So all of the melee creeps are going to look to focus down one minion in particular, and you can see that's 2 minions of experience lost by JiaQi. They're going to try and zone him off of the 3rd melee creep as well. Successfully done, or rather not successfully done, as he's got a little bit of XP, but even still, losing just 2 creeps of XP is really big in that bot lane matchup. It means that your level 2 timers aren't nearly as strong or nearly as early. It also means that in a Lucian Nami lane as well, you're going to be behind the curve from that get-go, and it's going to make surviving in that lane even more difficult.
Yeah, there are some 2v2s that actually can contest Lucian Nami like over the first few levels, and then it gets difficult, especially once, you know, the Lucian gets a couple of items, hits level 6 particularly. Not going to happen this time around. It's going to be fully Peyz and Wink dominated, I think, from minute 1, just because of that early advantage. And that is not necessarily the best sign for FPX. JiaQi already used to burn that barrier as well to just get away from some of that initial chunk. Not the best start here for your FunPlus Phoenix bottom side.
Yeah, and I do like this from honestly a lot of our bot laners. We did start seeing this a bit more at MSI, where usually people use their combat summoners, aka the barrier, the heal, in do or die situations, but actually JiaQi here just using the barrier to keep himself topped off in this laning phase, so that he can continue to stand up and farm without the threat of maybe feel like he's in lethal range.
Look at that, Scout's 900th game in the LPL, 4th all-time as we see here. looks like he's going to have some trouble catching up with some of the people a little bit higher up because they're still active in the league as well. But shout out to him, a player that's really been a staple of the LPL in recent, for a long time. I guess for the last decade, even though of course he did originally come from that G1 background.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that that's a really important sort of benchmark as well to provide for people, just to remember those stories. And I do want to sort of highlight, as much as we've not been looking too much at that top side, that this is one of our featured matchups for this series. It is Xiaoxu, who's recently joined this JDG roster and honestly hasn't had too awful a start, too bad a showing at all. And he's got this Rumble now in game number 1. I mean, it's a really big pick to be taken. It was taken blind into that top lane, and he's going to have to deal with a pretty difficult laning phase up against the Ornn. But outside of that, expectation is that this Rumble is going to have some really big impact in these team fights with the combination of Shockwave, Nami Wave, and the Cyclone as well. I expect Xiaoxu to have some really big performances, and I think that for JDG fans in particular, they may be attributing some of their failures to some of these roster changes, and it'll be really important for Xiaoxu to have a good showing in this game number 1 to prove that actually the problems are lying elsewhere right now.
Yeah, a lot of the general consensus is that JDG, while replacing Ala and Missing with Xiaoxu and Wink, taking players that maybe had higher status but perhaps were a little bit more on the expensive side and replacing them with, pieces who they thought could be a little bit more, beneficial for the team, or maybe at least just comparable overall. A little bit more of that Moneyball strategy here in Split 3. And, so far, I feel like I agree with you. Like, they have not been the problems for some of the struggles that JDG have faced. It's been a lot of the same things that plagued them even into the postseason, where they did, of course, get eliminated by WE, and some of the struggles they had the regular season as well. Scout, that's not necessarily having, the best start to this split, not having the best year overall. He also needs to get a big step on things if, he wants to allow JDG to succeed.
And when we look back at this game in particular, Grapes, do want to highlight that this level 6 marker for JDG is going to be really important. They've got those massive ultimates, the big circles, as we've called out time and time again. So looking at where those objective fights are going to take place, Xiaoxu's just ticked over, Scout's already level 6. We've got Dragon already spawned, and those grubs coming up in a couple of minutes' time, where maybe the bot lane will be level 6 as well. This is a really important window for JDG to actually try to push an advantage, because as this game gets later, their composition does become more difficult to play. Lucian as a champion is notoriously difficult to have that same impact on as you reach the late game, in owing to his short range. The same to be said for a Rumble, for a Wukong. They can get kited and they can get punished, but it's FPX with Milky Way in this top brush who are maybe looking to strike first.
Oh, that's a
Never mind.
Rude awakening. I mean, we saw the toggle vision of they knew exactly where Milky Way was, but they didn't know until just then. That information, though, allowed for Jun to come down there and pick up the first dragon of the game for JD Gaming, which obviously a pretty good start for them. Slight goal advantage in kind of all lanes, particularly the bottom side is where we're seeing it the largest, but also shout out to Xiaoxu, who is farming up rather nicely on the bottom side now.
And as we highlighted for JDG, that it's that one item spike is where they go good, as Peyz hit by a Winter's Bite, going to get stunned up, should be able to walk it out and maybe even trade a little bit more back onto JiaQi, but you are seeing that this Ezreal Braum, not necessarily a duo that can be completely pushed over once we've had that first recall and we've reset the laning phase. The power of FPX, I do think, comes from a little bit later on as Peyz dashes forward, gets... Okay, fine. Guys, let me tell you what you can do.
Yeah, we ought to hear the analysis.
I mean, I do think that for FPX, their team fighting actually looks pretty decent between the Talia and the Ornn as well. They've got the Braum to help set up for that sort of returned disengage if we do see the Wukong go forward. And their composition does thrive more around the pick-oriented, or around the pick, let's say. If they can find one person isolated, or if they can just isolate one person in a team fight, that's where they're going to succeed.
Yeah, you throw the Braum stun onto somebody, and then Talia combo into, just a Xin Zhao just jumping onto onto a Scout or onto a Peyz to start off a team fight. That is how FPX want to play, a little bit more one at a time. Not as much as the big AoE, just like kill all 5 people at the same time that JDG have to offer, which I think makes things slightly more difficult for FPX. And when I see what they have to do in the team fights, I think at least one of Care or JiaQi really has to come online and be that consistent DPS here. once we get later on into this game. So my eyes are right now on to who can step up out of the two of them to become that big threat.
This is JDG's time, right? With all of these ultis up and ready, this is when we're looking to see JDG really pop off. We don't have first items yet, but the fact that FPX are able to steal away just one of those grubs for me is really big. It's a pretty important win for them, and JDG didn't get all 3 grubs. They did get the dragon down on that bot side, and I feel like this is maybe a little bit of a response to that. But for FPX, decent enough advantage that they're able to steal away 1.
Still counts on the feat of monster slaying for JDG because they got the majority of the only 3 grubs that spawn now, of course, here in the game on the Spirit Blossom patch. So one more dragon, a Rift Herald, that would give them the first of those feats of strength, which, you know, again, not necessarily the biggest impact, but of course something to take a look at, especially here in some of the more quiet early games.
You get to see there that Xi is able to make his way back out to safety, and already, you know, we talk about this being a relatively quiet early game. Do want to highlight where some of those advantages are being found, despite the positive trades that we saw from JiaQi and Jwei. Actually, they are kind of very far behind with respect to that gold. Peyz is pretty much a full level up over JiaQi, as Xiaoxu may be the one in trouble, or is it Jwei?
It's a full combo from that Flame Spitter, plus some Electro Harpoon. Jwei getting down to about 60% HP. Milky Way is going to go forward, forcing Shun to actually pop the Cyclone. That's a big cooldown that you'd be happy about burning for FPX.
I mean, I don't know that that was forced from Jun, I'll be honest. It felt like he could have just cloned away and walked out either way. Maybe the CC and the knock-up would have come through and he'd have had to flash or burn his ulti in a different way. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But for FPX, it's a big win for them and does stymie some of those plays that JDG can look to make. I do think that Jun's ulti will be about back up in time for this dragon now spawning in 90 seconds time. And the question really is, can they hit any of those first items before this comes through? You can see Jun working towards his first item. Peyz now recalling, probably going to pick up that Essence Reaver and have a little bit of a boost there. But Weaver's wall top, still has flash.
So play on to Xiaoxu as Care unable to land the seismic jump. They burn the flash off of the Rumble, which in general is going to be pretty beneficial, but you do use a couple of combat spells to try to make that happen.
Yeah, so a free timer there for Care. He's going to go back to base TP down to that bot side, and he burns the flash from the Rumble. That's something that we might look to see JDG sort of revisit and try to even up the score on. But even at this stage in the game, trying to take down an Ornn can be quite tricky, especially with all of the magic resistance that's being built up. You get to see Peyz doing a little bit of dancing here, dodging out on various skill shots, but with the Ezreal having hit that Sheen and Tia power spike, he's quite happy to sit back, relax, and chill for a couple of minutes, and maybe a couple of dragons as well, waiting for that Trinity Force to come through.
Nice issue calling for Peyz. That's what you want to do in the Lucian Nami lane. Once you get to that first complete item, once you hit level 6, just try to get mid lane priority right around when the time that these major objectives spawn. Speaking of 20 seconds until that Infernal is available, but FPX actually going to have a decent amount of time to try to reset things. They're going to send the True Shot Barrage out, try to get some mid lane priority of their own, as Milky Way already trying to clear some vision out of the river that has been controlled by JD Gaming over the last minute or so.
Yes, those small advantages that we're talking about. Rumble has hit Leandri's. Xiaoxu's walking down to this dragon. Jun's ulti is about to come back up off cooldown. And the first item for Peyz being completed, it's the only one on his team. Aside, it's Milky Way on the flip side, who's got that Sundered Sky already picked up.
Milky Way flashes in and knocks away 4 with the Crescent Guard, but he went a little bit too prematurely. It's going to be the equalizer to burn him down as the newest jungler for FPX has a rude awakening in his return. It's first blood over to JDG as they should control the Drake.
And that's going to be the dragon here picked up for JDG, and maybe some foreshadowing for things to come for FPX here. Very desynced on this engage here. Milky Way goes in with not really any follow-up. The Braum not able to do too much. The Ornn, Call the Forge God, was a little bit late, and now Xiaoxu face takes Care.
Yeah, he gets exhausted as well. Remember, they burned that flash at the top lane just a couple of minutes ago. The Glacial Fissure going to slow Xiaoxu down. Care going to try to get something back and will with that Unraveled Earth. So overall, making it a 1-for-1, but JDG overall still controlling the map by getting ahead on the objective front.
Yeah, nice little shutdown as well for Care. There'd been a little bit of a build-up of farm for Xiaoxu, which I guess meant that he was worthy of the shutdown, and in owing to that and getting the first kill of this game. It pretty much evens up that gold across the board here. Not really anything to be said on either side. I do want to highlight this here. Milky Way decides to go in, thinks that he's got a good angle, and does get, you know, a 4-man sweeps, completely separates JDG. Unfortunately, separates them all to the back, and there's nobody that can really get through. Xia's called the Forge God is very late, and by the time that he comes through, the Zinzal's already dead. There's nobody there left to follow up, and I think that FPX, you know, some of those teething pains that we are maybe expecting with a jungle change in a first competitive match.
And Milky Way, his eyes got wide. He saw 4 members grouped up. I could do something cool with my ultimate around this dragon, but yeah. I think the goal was to maybe try to insect shun into the enemy team, which honestly, like, even if that was the plan, like, I feel like if it was successful, it might have actually been counterproductive. So for Milky Way, maybe just having those eyes grow a little bit too much, be a little bit too anxious to go for a play when maybe staying put would have been the better option.
And to once again take stock of our solo laners as maybe more of an area that we're interested in for this series in particular, saying that Scout needs to have a pretty big performance versus Care, one of our weaker mid laners in Ascend. In the laning phase individually, had about a 20 CS lead. That gold, though, is just because of that gold lead, or the kill that Care achieved, has pretty much evened up. But Scout in the lane, he's a little bit ahead in experience, a little bit ahead in CS as well, so pretty good opening for Scout. For Xiaoxu as well, he got a kill in that team fight, so he's a little bit up on gold, but actually it is that top lane Xia that's doing very, very well for FPX in this Ornn versus Rumble.
So for now, things kind of more on the even front in terms of gold, with this Herald spawning in 10 seconds. You can now see both teams focusing their attention towards that side of the map. Milky Way dashing forward, forcing a heal out of Peyz. Nice flash away from the Lucian to get away from that Glacial Fissure, and now it can issue out some counter damage with the culling. Another set of summoner spells as Care had to burn his flash, so overall FPX burn a couple of sums, burn a lot of ultimates, but it's going to get them priority on the Herald for now.
They still have Wave, Shockwave, and that Equalizer, so if they want to contest this, they've got some big ultimates to be able to do so. We ain't going to be able to sustain up with that ebb and flow. They've got a little bit of vision on it as well now with that ward that Care's walking over. Xiaoxu in the river here. Equalizer could be massive.
Scout, blast cone's over. He's stuck in the pit right now, but he's okay with that at this point. Shockwave lands on a Milky Way. They're gonna try to just focus down the Herald, and Milky Way should smite it away. Peyz down to 400 HP. He dashes away, and Xiaoxu's overheated. Shun looking for a little bit more damage onto Jwei. Dashing forward, one more crushing blow will seal the fate of Jwei. It's a 1-for-0 overall for JDG, but already FPX controlling that Rift Herald. They have themselves the eye in Milky Way's hands, and they'll send themselves back to base overall happy with how things went.
A very strange skirmish here, but it's FPX who come out with that Herald objective. They may lose out on this tier 1 turret in the mid lane, though. You can see Jun fishing for JiaQi.
Forcing a flash. You're going to take that. A lot of mid lane damage, too.
Yeah, they take the turret in the mid lane as well, so I think overall this is very favourable for JDG. Xia not quite able to get in time to stop that play from happening. Now it's a case of reset, get back out onto the map. We've got Dragon in 1 minute. These neutral objectives are not slowing down, and JDG with 2 Drakes already to the good, they're going to want to try and extend that, push themselves to soul point, put a lot of pressure on FPX early. But I'm concerned that if they aren't taking those resets now, that they're not going to be able to get there in time with all of those items and set up adequate vision. A reminder that FPX's composition thrives when people are face checking. They've got really good pick, really good potential to take down one target very quickly. And if they can do that by having set up early on at these objectives, then that's a pretty good way for them to try and find a way back into this match.
Yeah, got to get to these objectives first, and so far they have done so around this eventual Chemtech that is spawning in 20 seconds time. The JDG now starting to deploy. Xiaoxu's still stuck at the top lane. I don't think he's going to have his teleport available until after the dragon has spawned, unless there's a bit of a visual bug on my screen. I'm looking very closely. I think
going to be tight.
Spell up.
Yeah. He'll go back to base now. He'll probably have the TP in once he's channeled his base and bought his item. So a case of who can push mid, and instead it actually looks like Xiaoxu doesn't really want the item. He's going to go to top side, finish off that tier 1 turret, and then maybe look to TP in afterwards.
Ooh, Care going forward with the Weaver's Wall. But all of JDG have the ability to actually just dash back out of things here. With that time being spent, though, Xiaoxu is able to claim the tier 1 on the top side. And JDG now gathering mid lane priority. They're going to send Xiaoxu back to base. He has the teleport now, going to send it into mid lane as FPX started up this dragon. waiting for JDG. The question is, do they want to fully go for this engage? Carry shooting out a decent amount of hope on the shot. As Xiaoxu has now arrived. The Dragon's at 5,000 HP. Zheng gonna try to get in there to secure a soul point for his team. Or just start the fight in its own right. Sheer with the call the Forge God lands it onto Peyz, forcing him away. And that means that FPX will claim the Drake, and with the Scuttle Crab, be able to walk away with that extra movement speed and get themselves that objective for basically nothing.
And you can see that the fact that FPX are set up first is really powerful for them. It means that they can just use Call the Forge God to zone away those carries, make it so that Peyz can never really get into the fight. And I will say as well that one of these drawbacks that JDG are going to run into is that they don't really have anybody to send forward into that team fight. Right, Jun, if he goes in, he's going solo, so he's just going to get melted. If Xiaoxu walks forward, he's going to be in a bit of trouble as well on this turret.
Does not hit that additional wind becomes lightning, but a huge chunk of damage comes through from Care. And that means that he will pick up his second kill of the game. And Xiaoxu will die once more. That should be the mid-tier or bot tier one also going down.
There is going to be some chip damage on this top tier 2, same for the mid lane tier 2 as well, so it's not without its own consequence, but for the time being, it's a good play for FPX to secure themselves one turret, secure themselves a kill as well, and bully this side lane of JDG. Xiaoxu there sticking around just a little bit too long, maybe expecting that the rest of the team would have gone back to base, but I don't think that that's a bad death necessarily by the Rumble. It's an injection into Care, an injection into that legacy mid laner, the franchise mid laner of FPX, something that they've tried to rally behind in seasons gone by, so it's now about whether or not Care can pay that forward in the future team fights.
Yeah, the only member from FPX of 2024 that kept around for 2025. Obviously, Milky Way was a part of that team initially, but now rejoining the fray, I feel like you can't necessarily consider him still a mainstay of this roster. It really has been Care, who even came through, I believe, their academy system a couple of years ago. And whenever we talked about one of these backline carries, Care or JiaQi, really trying to get a lead, that would really help FPX once we get to some of these later stages. Care has done that and has to now be the one dishing out consistent damage. We saw some of it in those dragon fights, but it has to continue to happen here if FPX do want to win full-on 5v5s instead of just being that pick comp that we have kind of discussed early on.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's about JDG seeing if they can maybe stymie a little bit of those efforts, and Peyz there. I don't know if that was a misclick trying to hit that ward and hitting the Atacon instead, but it means that that ward is going to at least stick around for a little bit longer and actually give Jwei a way into this as the Atacon helping scout farm these minions a little bit. We love the tether range on Atacon.
It's so long, so much further compared to any of the other objectives. Like if you were Syndra and able to like pick it up, you'd be able to. There'd be some fun like Vandroid content that you'd be able to pull. If like, how far can we take the Atacon? But
it would just be the enemy's base, which is the like. We can intuit how far that one would be able to go.
You queue up with your friends for one for all, and then you just try to. That's just your goal the entire time.
Oh,
true. Like, that'd be really fun.
I think that'd be too easy, to be honest. Like 5 Syndra Ws, I'm taking that thing to ARAM. You know, like there's no limits on where I can take that. You did see how quickly on screen there, though, that Milky did get his ulti force. I'm surprised that this doesn't mean that JDG are going to look for a fight around the Atacon, but it does look like they're familiar with these TP timings. You can see that Sheer has teleport available where Xiaoxu did not, and with this Rumble being up on that top side, it means that if JDG look for a fight around the Atacon, that actually they don't have the ability to contest or to play it as a 5 versus 5 without sacrificing quite a bit from Xiaoxu, who now does have that Bloodletter's Curse. And I do want to talk about this item a little bit as well. It's an item that reduces the MR. It's effectively a Black Cleaver, but for magic for magic champions. And much like for the Black Cleaver, you're always looking to see who else on the team can benefit from this. And importantly, in this game in particular, Scout can do some real work if there are people who've had their magic resistance drained.
And not only that, Peyz, you know, with the Nami E onto him, those auto attacks maybe hit a little bit more too. So kind of a smaller reason as to picking up this Bloodletter's Curse, but overall an item that really has risen in priority, specifically on a champion like the Rumble, and just a little bit of that extra synergy that it can provide to JDG, specifically when they are fully grouped up. Speaking of grouping up, I'm going to expect both of these teams to do that in the next 30 seconds or so, as another Dragon has spawned. Another opportunity for JDG to claim Soul Point. You remember last time FPX were the ones to get to the pit first, and their composition thrives when that happens. Not so lucky this time, as JDG right now controlling the river.
Yeah, and for me at least, it's really tricky for FPX to walk into contest this. The reason that their first fight went or the last fight went well, was because they were able to get into the river early on, and they were able to find this objective setup. But they're waiting to do this until 1 second on the dragon spawn, and I wasn't expecting it to be as easy as it is. But with Xiaoxu on that top side, it's meaning that Xia, making his way down early, can actually help out the squad, and they've already started up this dragon. So again, JDG should find it difficult to walk in here without some unique flank angles.
That's FPX for quickly taking control. As Dragon's down to 5,000 HP. Seismic Shove does not land on the Xiaoxu as Kara has a good angle to dish out a lot of damage. The Weaver's Wall's going to come out, actually really separate everybody on JDG. The Call of Board God only finding the clone, but that's enough for the Dragon to be secured by Milky Way once again. But the Equalizer is slowing the front line up. In goes Shun with a Cyclone, and this Tidal Wave will knock up 3. But everybody on FPX should still be able to get away. JiaQi wanting to make sure he can try to save his flash a little bit and issue out some more poke. Finally, we'll use that arcane shift over the wall as FPX once again do a nice job securing the Dragon.
Yeah, and it's JDG that can't walk in. They don't have a tank, they don't have a front line to just absorb or to really find any engage at all. A Tidal Wave goes down, there's an Equalizer for some soft CC as well, but JDG unable to find a fight. Now though, without that Call the Forge God, without the Weaver's Wall and the Glacial Fissure, JDG feel like they can start this Atacon up, but again, we saw this back at the start of Season 25, where if you start the Atacon, you pretty much lose it if the enemy team choose to contest, and that's a sacrifice once again made by JDG, where they tried to use a little bit of their tempo to start an objective instead of pushing for some turrets in that bot lane, and they don't get anything for it.
They do burn the TP of Sheer. If you want to count that as a win, potentially. I feel like Sheer will be in the team fights kind of regardless, so we'll see how big of an impact that really is, but a small victory for them. Another reason why it's difficult for JDG to start up that Otacon, take a look at the runes, the Keystone runes on the bottom half of your screen. No Summoner Spellbook for Wink. You have to go the Airy to try to help Peyz in the 2v2, but that means an extra Smite was available here as Jwei was able to pick it up with the Summoner Spellbook. So it makes it a little bit harder to secure it, especially in a 50-50 scenario.
Yeah, contesting there for FPX actually quite easy, as you highlighted with that Spellbook, but for JDG, they do finally end up making that play for the tier 1 turret down on the bot side. Scout able to whittle away at that health pool and actually find himself now a second turret as Jun top side.
Oh, Shun. He clears out the entire wave of the Cyclone, forces Kara to flash in a bad spot. And here is Peyz. Eats a big chunk. Weaver's Wall not going to be used in time as Peyz finally gets on the board himself.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any angle that you can take that wall and expect to get out to safety. A couple of Lucian autos and you are just going to fall. But that's a really big win for JDG, and honestly might be the thing that really starts to establish them as the ascendants in this game. The amount of gold and the amount of funneling that FPX has put into this mid laner was massive, right? He's the only person with kills on their team, and he got all of the gold, and for him to pay it back by dying in a side lane like that is really detrimental. So JDG, now they can look to make a bit of a proactive play. There's 10 seconds on Care before he respawns, and he will come back out onto the map with a teleport. It's whether or not FPX can get in. Remember, it's much more difficult for this pick comp to walk forward than it is when they're already set up.
He didn't actually use the Weaver's Wall unless it's a visual bug, so that should be available for him to get into things. Call the Forge God comes out. Scout was separated, but he instead goes for the other side of things. Sheer, maybe not finding a single target with that ability as Tidal Wave combined with the Equalizer. It's chunking Care down to 40% HP. Shockwave lands on a 3 from Scout, and now the slaughter could potentially commence. Shun claims the Otacon. And now JiaQi is the healthiest member, but he's the farthest forward. He gets dashed on by Shun. Now a 5v4 has opened up, and JiaQi has to flash away. Sheer now taking the brunt of the damage, and he's going to have to use the shearing charge to try to escape, but in goes Scout. He flashes forward, gets a double kill, and all of FPX are down. An ace picked up as JDG now control the Rift.
And as soon as they can get in, JDG slaughter FPX. It's clinical down in the bot lane, and honestly, we were saying this season that Scout had been lackluster. This one fight from the JDG mid laner is enough to set apart him from the rest of that grouping once again. A mammoth performance from him down on the bot side, as he certainly puts FPX in the dirt. They take the tier 3 turret as well as the 6 turrets before that. But I do want you to keep your eyes on Scout. Look at how unthreatened he is throughout all of this. there's this constant 50-50 potential between the junglers as Milky Way staying to maybe try and flip for the Atacon. But look at where Scout's ball is this whole time. JiaQi knows he can't walk up to this, so he's backing away. The frontliners know that they have to walk in to try and buy space for this steal. But as soon as they do that, Scout's ball just tears them apart.
And shout out to Xiaoxu as well. That equalizer slowing down a lot of FPX, giving Scout the opportunity to dish out that extra poke damage very quietly, having a good team fight in his own right. But as you say, Rude, real hero of this one being Scout, able to get himself 3 kills out of this fight. And overall, setting JDG up for immense success. They now have a over 7,000 gold lead and a Baron not even taken. As now FPX look a little bit more desperate. Scout, as we were praising him, now gets caught out, and Milky Way will shut him down. No mid laner this time for JDG to win this team fight, as FunPlus Phoenix can now make their way towards what could be their 3rd Chemtech Drake of the game.
Yeah, and it's Care, just as we criticized him for being caught on a side lane in top lane. Now it's about how well can FPX hold this choke. Making JDG walk in shouldn't be easy.
Yeah, Sheer trying to box out everybody on JDG. Shun unable to ever get into the pit. They knock up Peyz. Milky Way with a 3-talent strike, but he goes a little bit too far, and Peyz is able to take him down. 2 kills go in the hands of JD Gaming, and they could look for more, with Shun looking very aggressively, but they instead decide to turn their sights towards the Baron.
Yeah, they'll take the win where they can get it there. FPX reaching a little too far forward. The second instance where we've seen Milky Way actually get a bit too big for his britches, and it cost FPX big time. They go forward, a flash engage onto Peyz, but he's got Summoner's Barrier ready. He's got all of the support from Wink there as well. And it's just too close to the sun for Milky Way, as the nice thing is that JDG secure themselves a 1 fight around that dragon, secure themselves a Baron as well.
Oh!
The timing looked good, but Jun knows, he knows his smites. He's got it.
I was like, no way, right? But, okay.
I was thinking, should I say that they've secured it before they secure it? As I see this Ezreal ulti wind up, I was like, no, I'm going to have faith.
Well timed by JiaQi. You know, we can give him credit there, but, you know, Shun doing his due diligence, knowing there's a full global, and pressing smite at the right time. It feels like Milky Way in these fights, Crude, doesn't go in when there are good opportunities to go in, and then maybe a little bit too aggressive in other moments like this.
Yeah, and Sheer, unfortunately, with a bit of a blunder there, he flashes in. I don't think he expected his pillar to still be there, but he really short stops his E. Instead of knocking him up on the knuckle of the wall into the mid lane, he ends up knocking up on the little pillar that he put previously, and he's by no means in range to knock up Peyz, and that layering of CC wasn't quite available. Milky Way going
very aggressive with that empowered blast cone, knocking up Peyz. There goes a huge combo, and Care gets a rack in his back pocket. Another nice pick from FPX. That's what their composition likes to do, and they have stymied the Baron push for now.
And Peyz here has flash, so just complete disrespect for the follow-up that FPX have. The one thing that this FPX composition will do is pick you. You get hit by one piece of CC, they've got plenty to follow up with, and also it's very disrespectful from the JDG mid laner, costing his team out on what is probably going to be inhibitors and what would have been their likely push toward the end of this game.
The Scout's gotten picked once, Peyz got picked once, everybody gets one, guys. Can't happen again, as this game should be in the process of being closed out, but as items start to get picked up, JiaQi's now at his 3rd, the ornaments now really coming to play a big role as Sheer has hit level 15. The gold lead will start to matter less and less as this game goes on, and it comes down to that singular execution. The next time a pick is had onto either Scout or Peyz route, that could mean either the Soul or another Baron as soon as it respawns.
Yeah, exactly. So if they are continuing to find these picks, and it seems like just at the random clutch moments, FPX may be starting to set up, and we've seen from them in their 2-0 versus IG that there is an element of creativity to this roster, that they can find those fringe situations where maybe other teams wouldn't look for it as Peyz walks forward.
Oh my god, Care almost getting 100 to 0'd by that culling. And that can show what this Lucian still can do at this point in the game. Peyz with an Infinity Edge as his 4th item. Very powerful in his own right. But the Baron buff is available for just one more wave. Don't think JDG will be able to use it to break open an inhib unless they are able to do it on this final push. The time is ticking, and FPX do have an opportunity to respond.
into a shot barrage, immediately healed up here by Winks. You can see the power of this Nami in the late game, just whistling away some of that poke. Peyz is already back to full HP. They aren't able to take the turret. It will stand tall and start to slowly regenerate that HP. A reminder that JDG do have an open inhibitor down on that bot side that they could focus if they wanted to. But that bot wave is in a really good position to help them out. When you look at the engages on both of these sides, it's pretty tricky for either side to find that big one.
Oh, let you do that! That's a Shun Scout combo. Shockwave landing onto JiaQi, taking him down instantly, and Shear's the next target, already 2 for nothing, and that might be it. JDG find a perfect engage as they take 2 down and 2 inhibitors.
We love a good caster curse. It's tricky to find an engage. Well, we found the one way that we can. Peyz, though. Flash.
He's going to get engaged on too, but Milky with the Crescent Guard going to keep himself alive for a little bit. Not enough, though, as Peyz jumps into the Crescent Guard and ends up picking up the 3rd kill of this extended fight. 3 for nothing now. It's going to have to just be Care and Jwei. Not much hope in the world unless these waves can be cleared with these. Wink keeps up a ton of tower shots now with the flash away. Should be able to survive. But with JiaQi spawning in 10, JDG do not want to risk going for a crazy attempt to end.
Okay, the game doesn't end, Grapes, but it's pretty much won from here for JDG. They have a 10k gold lead, and more importantly, their presence on the map just went up exponentially. They secured 2 inhibitors, and there's an open inhibitor in that top side as well. They should just be able to find that top inhibitor, use those triple waves of super minions to push into the base and thwart FPX's attempt at a comeback here. I like the effort from Milky Way to try and get onto Peyz as he dashes forward, but fortunately this time round, Lucian with that flash available, he was able to get back out to safety and, you know, used his flash better than we saw from him previously, as FPX attempting to try and take this crab. Or Umbral not the fastest duo at this, and thankfully Care is there. So maybe fighting?
Yeah. He's doing a lot of damage still, as he is getting close to that 5th and final item. Could be a Guardian Angel, could be a Bloodthirster, it could be a number of things at this point. Regardless, it seems that this Lucian is very strong at this point. With the Baron spawning at 45, they might have tried to cut out Scout, but he uses a Shockwave really nicely to stall out Care and wait for the rest of his team to arrive. He gets knocked up though by the steering charge. Milky Way gonna try to chase him down, but Scout's gonna be able to live with the help of the healing from Wink and keep himself alive. And he waits for the rest of his team to respawn. Already 2 for nothing. JiaQi has to flash away, and in comes Xiaoxu, burning FPX to a crisp. And Care goes down. JiaQi goes forward to try to get one back, but it will not happen. Peyz will live with 50 HP, and JDG will control game 1 of this best of 3.
A very meticulous game number 1 from JDG, and one that they win deservingly here. It looks really good for FPX for about 10-15 minutes of this, but playing from that gold deficit and the one chance that they had around that Atacon on that bot side didn't quite go their way, and it felt like it was this building eminent pressure that was inevitable for JDG. The second that team fight actually happened, and the second they managed to get into a 5 versus 5, it all crumbled for FPX, and JDG snowballed. They took the game back by the horns, and they managed to find themselves this game 1.
And taking advantage not necessarily of a big team fight that fully broke the game open until very later on. It was a lot of getting farm advantages, a lot of making sure that tower plates were able to be secured. Just the early game kind of led into a strong late game for this team. And that is a good sign here for JDG, as they're just coming off of, again, a pretty tough start to the regular season. They have come out firing and didn't really show that many flaws other than a couple of players getting picked off at the wrong times here in this first game.
Yeah, I mean, uncharacteristically almost, it's Peyz who's hesitant to use a flash or getting caught out a little bit too frequently. And I do think that, we highlighted at the top of this series that Scout hadn't been performing as well as we'd have needed him to. In this game, had a really standout performance on the Orianna. Care as well, I will say, on the flip side. Got a load of kills on this Talia and actually ended up finding those picks using the Weaver's Wall to find Peyz significant amount of times, which is pretty important. And, we can see these highlight players from this mid lane pool actually start to step up. Unfortunately, though, for FPX, not quite doing enough, and I think that there are still some very clear teething problems between Milky Way and the rest of FPX, right? There were definitely a couple of engages where he's gone just a little bit too close, and he maybe sees an angle that's not quite there that might have cost them a little bit too much in this game.
Yeah, coordination issues that need to be fixed, and obviously the first game that we are seeing with this roster of 5 play together on a LPL stage at the very least. Probably some scrims mixed in there, obviously, but for FPX, it's about finding that balance, finding how this group of 5 can work together, because again, we're pretty excited about all 5 of these players individually. We've seen each of them have good splits, whether it was Milky Way last year, Jwei just this past split, even somebody like Sheer that has had his highs in a lot of these various couple of seasons that he's been a part of, but waiting for them to all kind of merge together is the next step for this FPX team as we take a look at the gold graphs and all the like, as Peyz did a lot of damage here in this game.
Yeah, I mean, he's got more damage there, almost doubling JiaQi for the AD carries, which is really, really impressive, especially versus a poke champion like the Ezreal. And when you can see that JiaQi has 38% of his team's damage and Peyz is still doing that quantifiable number more is equally, something that you should honestly be quite scared of as FPX. And for JDG as well, this is kind of why Peyz has been one of those consistent players, or why we highlight him as somebody to be excited by, because so frequently he's able to pump out these massive numbers and be this massive threat in the game.
Take a look at some of the highlights here. A couple of pretty bad mistakes from Care. He had some big catches himself, but also got caught out a number of times that resulted in these big objectives going down. This was the fight that really broke things open, and again, Scout deserves a lot of credit here, although he was very aggressive with the positioning, and that's something that we have seen repeatedly. This time it did not end up getting punished, but always something to keep an eye on when it comes to how JDG end up playing.
Yeah, and as soon as Scout's able to step forward there, that tension around the choke point, around that knuckle, is really important. Because the second the FPX go either one way or the other, it either opens up for the Orianna to get a massive flank angle and a massive shockwave, or it opens up for the rest of JDG to walk in and gain access to the FPX backline if they go for Scout. So it's, just that tension, really well managed, I will say, by the mid laner of JDG. And yes, he gets caught out here, but I will say the fight around the top side as well, where it looks like he's caught, but he uses flash, he uses Zhonya's, he baits in the rest of FPX. It does really good work for JDG. So overall, not too sad about how they performed here. And you can see, I want you to point out that Sheer in this game, right, this knock-up, not quite on the range of the pillar. So he can't get that catch, can't continue that CC onto Peyz.
We know Sheer more for his carry champions, obviously. So maybe the Orin, a little bit out of his comfort zone, had to pick it as a response to the Rumble. But that is no excuse. Obviously, you need to see better out of him. One of FPX's franchise players at this point, somebody that JDG ended up dropping going into the offseason of 2024. And now they're his counterpart in Xiaoxu. Had himself a pretty good game as well. MVP candidates, I think Peyz makes a lot of sense, but really everybody did pretty well on JDG's side.
Oh, okay. We didn't get to see the top of this, where Scout's flashing forward into a seismic shove, but you can see he's baited all of FPX in here. Double bubble as well from Wink actually buys a lot of time and probably keeps Scout alive. And you can just see that Peyz doing an absolute boatload of damage, and despite JiaQi's best efforts, and Ezreal not quite able to solo carry in the same vein.
Yeah, and that was another thing that we talked about compositionally speaking. Not a full 1v9 threat on FPX's side. I feel like JiaQi has been able to play things like the Kai'Sa very, very well, maybe saving it for a little bit later on in this series if you are in that true Fearless format. But I'd love to see either him or Care, or kind of anyone. I feel like there was not a full guy that we could rely on to be that super hard carry on FPX's side. It was a lot of poke, a lot of pick, as you said. But when it came down to a full team fight, obviously JDG had the advantage, both in terms of the players on the Rift and the champions that they were handling.
Yeah, so it's a pretty tricky position for FPX to have found themselves in, and especially when they're not set up at these plays, it really does mean that when JDG can walk forward, their life becomes a ton easier. You are quite right, though. Probably going to be looking at a Peyz MVP here. I'd give nods to the support as well. I do think that Wink had a honestly very, very solid game. But on the Nami, it's really tricky to try and earn those MVPs unless you are multiple triple bubbles in a fight,
Oh, Sean getting the nod here. I feel like makes a lot of sense. Again, very well-rounded victory. Shun caused a lot of those engages, which allowed, for Peyz to get active. So, we'll give him some credit there.
Yeah, and as well, found that flash engage at the end. That was the really important big ticket winner.
Yeah, so congratulations to JDG. They have won their first game of the day. However, still a best of 3. FPX gonna have that side select, have an opportunity to bounce back, force that decider here in this first series of the day here on LPL English. Well, if you'd like to support LPL English, consider becoming a coffee member. You can take, it's the best way to support the LPL English project, since the vast majority of your contributions will go directly to the show as opposed to a Twitch or YouTube subscription. A lot of the initial payments go into upgrading the broadcast in this fabulous new package that you see right here, but a huge bulk of it also pays on-air talent and content creators. Subscribe to the coffee. It is linked in our chat below to unlock perks like early access to content and the ability to ask interview questions for our unique on-site interviews. Once again, JDG taking game number 1 of this series over FPX. We'll see who is able to run away with this next one after this.